Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Light Sports Ramble. As always, our pleasure to come to you this evening. I am again joined by my co-host Evan Watallison and myself. Got a great show for you tonight. Tuesday evening, Evan, this is always a great night for us because this is where we take the topics from Twitter, from Facebook now. We haven't gotten any topics on Facebook yet, but I'm sure they will come soon. Our followers and friends are slowly migrating over to our Facebook page. But before we get started, as always, have to thank our newest affiliate, which is yourdailycowboysfootballfix.com, Cowgirl Cass, allowing us to be able to publish the Light Sports Ramble on her website, not only to increase viewership, but she had put an editor's note out today, Evan, and I know you hadn't had a chance to read it yet, but talking about expanding her website to all the teams and getting as much coverage in the NFL as she could. So I know that you and I are both honored to be able to be on the website, to be able to help her out. If you guys want to follow her, her Twitter handle is @cowgirlcast22, and the website again is yourdailycowboysfootballfix.com. Go check the site out. It is a great site, like I mentioned last night, not just NFL, but all sports in general. You can get a lot of good information there. But moving right into it, Evan, this is probably a topic that really jumped out at us because of the situation that we're having right now in Green Bay. We have a franchise quarterback. We have an elite quarterback. But now we're on our third string quarterback. We are out signing free agents in the middle of the season because our guy went down. But the question was posed, is there a lack of franchise quarterbacks in the NFL currently? And I know you had broken this down into 4 topics. One is those that are franchise quarterbacks, those that are on the brink, those that are too soon to tell, and then those teams that do need a franchise quarterback. So with that said, I'm going to let you tell the listeners who's falling into these 4 categories because you and I agree on most of them. And so let's talk about these 4 groups and who we think, and especially I think we'll spend a lot of time on 2 areas, and that's on who's on the brink, what's going to make them get to the next level, and then definitely about those teams that need a quarterback, and then talk about the incoming college class, which quarterbacks could fill that role and actually go into the too soon to tell category. But with that said, Evan, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's get rolling with our franchise quarterback chat.
Okay, well, the question posed was, are there a lack of franchise quarterbacks in the NFL today? And to be honest, to me, that question is no. I don't think there's a lack of franchise quarterbacks. Now, as you were saying, I did kind of break it down to a few categories. And when you're looking at franchise quarterbacks, I'm looking at, players like Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Philip Rivers, Cam Newton, Ben Roethlisberger, Joe Flacco, who I just moved into that category after thinking about it. Eli Manning, Matt Ryan, and then you have Andrew Luck, who I feel is crossing over that threshold of the next category into the franchise mode. If you look at all those players, a number of them have Super Bowl rings, a number of them have been to the playoffs multiple times. Cam Newton's on the cusp of making the playoffs. Just seeing what he did yesterday against New England, I think puts him into that franchise quarterback category. And then the guys that are not quite there but are close is your Russell Wilson, your RG3. They're young guys who are very close, I think. I just need to see more. I think I've seen enough from Andrew Luck. I need to see more from them. And with RG3, it's more because of that knee. And then you look at, Matt Stafford. What has he done really without Calvin Johnson? So I need to see more from him. And then I put Tony Romo in that category, and I'm sure Cass isn't going to like that a whole lot. But
oh man,
Tony Romo, he's not a guy I like the guy, but I just have a hard time saying he is a franchise quarterback, even though he gets paid like one.
Sure, buddy. We get on the website 2 days in, and all of a sudden you're putting Romo in that category. With our Cowboy fans that listen, but I think when they listen to where we're coming from, and I think we're going to get a mixed reaction on this. I've had this conversation, and I didn't mean to cut you off there, but to get right into that talk, I mean, like you're saying, there's some things that we got to see. And before you move on, I do want to let the fans know, as we talked about franchise quarterbacks, we're not saying they're elite quarterbacks. There is a big difference between a franchise quarterback and an elite quarterback. A franchise quarterback, in my opinion, is somebody that's going to be able to be with the team a long time and put them in a position to have success over a number of years. And of course, success is based on playoff runs, Super Bowl rings. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're an elite quarterback. And so I want the listeners to know that when we've grouped our franchise quarterbacks, that is not saying that Evan and I think they're elite quarterbacks, because that is a totally different topic. That is a totally different ramble. We have categorized our quarterbacks as franchise guys that can lead a team consistently to win. So with that said, Bud, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, and then I have Colin Kaepernick in there. Again, he had a good run last year, but he's been up and down this year. Alex Smith, I don't think he's ever going to be a franchise quarterback. He's a game manager. That's who Alex Smith is. You know, I have Andy Dalton. I don't think he's ever going to be a franchise quarterback. I think the fact that he plays with a wide receiver like A.J. Green, kind of the same where Matt Stafford comes from, even though Matt Stafford is more physically gifted. He has an elite wide receiver that he plays with that makes him look a lot better than he really is. And then I put Jay Cutler there. You know, I don't know if Jay Cutler is going to be a franchise quarterback. He is due for, you know, he's a free agent at the end of this year, and he's been struggling with injuries this year, and we all know what Jay Cutler is. He is a gunslinger that makes stupid throws when he shouldn't. So those are the, you know, the established quarterbacks that, you know, some of them I think are going to be moving up very, very soon, especially a Russell Wilson. I went back and forth on putting him in there, but I just need to see a little more from him, a little more line of work. And I believe that, you know, Stafford would be going up in that category soon. And this is just my opinion. Obviously, it's not, you know, us saying this is how it is. And then you look at the guys who are too soon to tell. Some of them are rookies this year. You know, E.J. Manuel, Eugeno Smith, who have shown flashes of brilliance, but have also struggled at times. Mike Glennon, Ryan Tannehill, two guys drafted. Well, Mike Glennon is a rookie. Yeah, he's a rookie. Then you have Ryan Tannehill and Nick Foles, two guys who were drafted last year. You know, Ryan Tannehill has all the potential to be a franchise-type quarterback, but I don't know if he ever will be. And Nick Foles has put up some very good numbers. And then teams that are desperate for new quarterbacks, and I think we can all agree, both you and I and listeners, is the Tennessee Titans. Jake Locker is not the answer there. He's an injury waiting to happen. Jacksonville, why they drafted Gabbert is beyond me. I don't know what they saw in him. Oakland, Terrell Pryor, I don't know if he can be a long-term solution. Carson Palmer in Arizona is a stopgap. He's in his 30s. He's on the tail end of his career. Cleveland Browns have Brandon Whedon and Jason Campbell. Possibly, you know, Brian Hoyer might be able to take over and be a long-term answer, but we don't know. Houston Texans have their problem with Schwab, and I don't think Keenan's the answer, and I don't have to go into too much detail about the Vikings. So that's kind of how I categorize. I put it in. I hope I didn't go too fast, but is there a lack of franchise quarterbacks? The answer is no. There's a number of guys that are franchise guys, and there are a number of guys that are very close to being franchise guys. So there's just some teams that keep swinging and missing on quarterbacks, like your Arizona Cardinals, and who always draft and miss on quarterbacks, and the Oakland Raiders, they always draft and miss on quarterbacks. So, but that's kind of how I have it broken down. What do you think?
Well, you and I had talked in the pre-chat, what we call it, before the ramble, and I can't disagree with how we categorize these quarterbacks. I just can't believe you put the Vikings down there as a team that needed a quarterback. I thought Christian Ponder was the answer. Come on now, that's
the answer if you want to lose.
Well, that's why Greg Jennings went there. That was the best chance for him to win, he said. So isn't he the franchise? I just had to.
I don't know what drug Greg Jennings was smoking when he just made that comment or that decision, but whatever it is, I would definitely like some.
Well, I had to joke just because I had to get a rib in at Greg Jennings. Plus, he's coming back to Lambeau Field this week, and we'll definitely talk. We'll definitely talk about that on Thursday in the Packer preview. But when we look at this, Evan, I totally agree with you. There is not a lack of franchise quarterbacks. If we would extend that question just a little bit, I do think there's a lack of elite quarterbacks in the league because elite quarterbacks don't come, they don't grow on trees. And so to have an elite quarterback, there's always going to be a limited number of elite quarterbacks. And I think why the question comes up, though, is you see the success of the Rodgers, you see the success of the Manning, and I'm talking about Peyton there, even though he only has one Super Bowl. But even Eli Manning with 2 Super Bowls, you're seeing people say, well, why don't we have a quarterback like that? Why don't we have that? Why don't we have that? And
there's a lot of things that go into it.
Exactly, and I think you brought up a very good point. Sometimes I think teams panic on draft day, and they think, oh, my God, this guy has great college skill. He's the answer. And you had mentioned it in the Matt Flynn episode that we talked about. Matt Flynn had one great game in Seattle, dropped them, $20-some million to be the franchise guy? Yeah. And that's kind of what happens with college quarterbacks. They have a great body of work in college, but then they get to the pros.
They put up good numbers at the combine.
And they can't adjust to the NFL game. And you and I both know that NFL game, 10 times faster than college, and the playbook is about 50 times bigger than college. And so they have a hard time adjusting. And then all of a sudden, like you said, these teams, they draft a quarterback that they think is the franchise guy, high draft pick on him, and it sets the franchise back because you've invested money, you've invested a high draft pick, and how do you move forward? You got to give the guy a chance to move forward. Yeah. And that's what's happening. So I totally agree with your assessment there. But, when I look at that group, and I really like your group of those quarterbacks that are maybe on the brink. And we had mentioned Tony Romo, and we joked a little bit because, again, we got to thank Cowgirl Cast for allowing us to be on our website. But when I look at the Tony Romo, could he be the franchise guy? I believe so. But the bottom line when we're defining franchise quarterback is you have to consistently win and put your team in a position to get to the Super Bowl. And when you look at your group that you had mentioned as franchise quarterbacks, they're doing it. The one in there that stuck out to me was Cam Newton. You put him in the franchise quarterback role, and I agree with you. Even though he hasn't done it, he is showing now that he has matured. And I know when he first came in, it was all about, his legs. But I'll tell you what, that dude has an arm. And that dude has really adjusted to the game. And he's doing what is asked of him this year in Carolina to put that team in a good position to actually make the playoffs, if not make a run at that division title. They still have to play the Saints twice. And so they're sitting pretty well. I was cheering against them last night. I mean, for Packers, we needed a loss there to bring Carolina back to the pack. They just separated themselves a little bit as the number one wild card, if not the division winner. And if they win the division, that makes the Saints the number one wild card. So that one stuck out to me just because he hasn't had some of the success of the other quarterbacks. And that's why I wanted to also say is there's a difference between elite and franchise because you included Joe Flacco in there. And I don't think he's an elite quarterback. Neither do you. You and I talked about that. But he is a franchise quarterback in that he gets that team to the playoffs. Now, granted, this year is totally different. They're scratching and clawing just to make the playoffs. That is why, in my mind, he's not an elite quarterback. He's not making the players around him better. But he's the guy that you're going to go with because he's proven that he can win. And he's going to keep bringing that team, putting them in a position to win. So when we look at that group, I think the answer is just what you said. There is not a lack of franchise quarterbacks in the NFL. Plus, that group could rise next year. I mean, you have a good list of on-the-brink quarterbacks. The Russell Wilsons, the Kaepernicks. I mean, he has struggled a little bit. But there is a good group there that could move in. And we could be talking about half the league having a franchise quarterback next year. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, it looks that way because I have right now 11 guys that I would classify as franchise guys, and then there's 3 guys that are close to being in that category too. So yeah, we could. There's a lot of good young quarterbacks in the league. I was talking to a guy I work with once about what's going to happen when you're Peyton Manning and you Drew Brees and you're Tom Brady's retired. What's going to happen? But looking at the state of quarterbacking in the NFL right now, there's a lot of good young quarterbacks out there right now.
Yeah, and again, I think what we're seeing kind of that change of guard. We had that time when we had the Aikmans, and we had the Favres, even the Randall Cunninghams, and there was
Young.
Yeah, and Steve Young, and so we had a bigger group of quarterbacks that there was a bigger argument for elite quarterback, and I just don't think there's an argument for elite anymore. And so now we've changed the terminology to franchise, and who's the guy that we're going to put our money in for the next 10 years to help us win and put us in a position to win. But I think what we're going to see, like you said, the Breezes retire, the Brady's retire, and even Aaron Rodgers, he's not a young guy. I mean, he sat behind Favre.
Yeah, he turns 30 this year.
He's already going to be turning 30. And so there's a little bit of a changing of the guard with the young guys having to come up and take over the reign of the NFL. It'll be exciting to watch. So with that said, let's move into the next part of it, which is that group of teams that need a quarterback. And you had listed, and we went through this in the pre-chat, we have a pretty deep quarterback class coming out of college this year, Evan. And so when we look at it, just for the listeners, let's name some of the people that the scouts and some of the prospects that are coming out. I know we had mentioned 10, and we don't have to go over all of them, but let's throw this group out just so the listeners realize there is a pretty deep quarterback class coming out, and then you and I can pick a few out that we think can really become and maybe fit into that mold of a franchise quarterback. But I'll let you give that list to the listeners.
Yeah, well, the ones that I think really stand out would be your Teddy Bridgewater at Louisville. He's in my mind, he's a special quarterback. He's got the tools to be really good. Question mark around him is obviously he plays at Louisville. Your Mariota from Oregon. Your Johnny Manziel from A&M. Derek Carr, and you might remember his brother David Carr. But Derek Carr from Fresno State. And then you have Mettenberger from LSU, A.J. McCarron from Alabama, and you have Andrew Murray from Georgia, just to name a few.
And of these quarterbacks, Evan, when I look at it, it's a deep quarterback class, but I don't see anybody that's going to come in on day one and take the reins, like, for example, in a Jacksonville or in a Tennessee. There's one quarterback that I think could come in and do that, and I think that's Murray from Georgia. I mean, he's the guy I think when I watch him play, the way that he plays and the system that he has is probably, in my opinion, and again, we always got to say this is our opinion, and as I said, Evan, I'm the idiot with an opinion. I think Murray's the guy that could be the one guy that you maybe throw in week one and can handle everything else going on. I have question marks across the board myself. Like you said, the Teddy Bridgewater, good quarterback, has all the tools, but he needs to be developed to play against some solid talent. I mean, what's hurting him is he plays at Louisville. And you had mentioned early that he had tore up Florida in the bowl game, but I haven't seen it consistently. He's got the tools, and maybe he's the surprise guy. I don't know. It's like looking into a crystal ball. What are we going to find? We don't know. But I'm not sure when we look at this. Do you think there's going to be teams that are going to reach with the depth of this quarterback class, knowing that you can get a guy and maybe develop him? That group that you're talking about, those teams that need a quarterback. Do you think they're going to go out and reach in the first round this year?
I think there might be some. I think the Cleveland Browns would be one that might reach because Brandon Weeden isn't the answer. Jason Campbell's not the answer. I could see the Browns reaching. I can see them, reaching for like a Derek Carr or a Manziel, bring some excitement to town. I could see the Eagles. They have to decide if Nick Foles and Matt Barkley are an answer, especially with Mariota possibly entering the draft. Mariota knows Chip Kelly pretty well from Oregon, but he's on the young side. And I think Houston, I could see them needing to reach for a quarterback, or I could see them, trying to pull off the trade for Ben Roethlisberger, because it's been rumored that he wants out of Pittsburgh, and that would be a perfect fit for Arizona. But if not, then that would be a perfect spot for Murray to fall into, because Palmer's not going to play forever, and it'd be a good place for Murray to learn the NFL game a little bit. But I could see teams reaching. The Raiders seem to always reach. The Jaguars seem to always reach. The Vikings always seem to reach. So, yeah, I could see teams reaching for some of these guys. But a lot of these guys have big question marks. Like Mansell, he will actually be of size, and he's the maturity issue with him. And like you said about Mariota, he's young, Bridgewater competition, Derek Carr competition, plus we all remember his brother. A.J. McCarron, is he anything more than Alex Smith in the NFL? So there's a lot of questions about this quarterback class. A number of potential, stars, but a lot more questions than answers right now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure who's going to separate themselves, and maybe that's what the Combine will be for. Unfortunately, the Combine to me, and I actually, believe it or not, I had a chance to go last year. One Iota was giving out some tickets, and they had the fan experience, and I got to see the offensive lineman on the first day. It was actually, it was great. It was an awesome experience, wonderful. But my thing with that is we see people go out and have these great combines, and it's a make it or break it for their paycheck. To me, the Combine doesn't tell me how they're going to compete in the NFL. To me, the Combine is they are there to try and write their paycheck. And so they prepare for that, and those that have a great Combine are going to get the huge payday, and especially for quarterbacks. And that's where the reaching comes from. And unfortunately, when we talk about those teams in the bottom that need quarterbacks, like I said, I look at this group, and it's a good quality group, don't get me wrong, and a lot of talent and a lot of big numbers in college. But I'm trying to relate it. I mean, I've watched the NFL for a long time, and I am no analyst, I am no scout, but being around football as long as I have, I just see the way that the college game is going, and I look at, these numbers when they get put up. They're not playing against that NFL caliber defense and the different schemes and the blitzes and the looks. And so that's where my question marks come. And again, I'm not saying that these quarterbacks don't have the tools, because they do. I mean, I really like Bridgewater. I really do. I think he's got all the physical tools. He just needs to get in the right situation. And so where I'm going with this is the teams that need a quarterback, is it the right situation for any of these quarterbacks? Because you need to have the right coaching staff to be able to develop a young quarterback. And when you look at the success, and I'll let you get right to it, I just want to finish real quick. When you look at the success and the quick success of these young quarterbacks, the Andrew Lucks, the Russell Wilsons, they've got the coaching staff that is seeing the talent they have, making a game plan and putting them in situations to allow them to grow. But while they're growing, the game planning and the situation is so great that they're winning. And so I'll let you go with your thought there. Those teams in the bottom, is it the right fit for any of them? Because you need to have the right coaching staff in place.
Well, the big issue for teams, being able to develop the quarterback, and right in the head is the right situation, the right coaching staff. Aaron Rodgers fell into the right situation in Green Bay with playing behind Favre for a couple of years and having Mike McCarthy there. And when you look at the teams that need a quarterback this year, one that does stand out, or two that stand out to me actually, would be your Arizona Cardinals. You look at who helped develop Ben Roethlisberger and helped develop Luck. He's coaching down in Arizona right now.
Exactly.
Bruce Arenas. How do you say his last name?
Arenas.
Arenas? I thought I was going to say it wrong. We have Bruce Arenas. And then in Cleveland, you have North Turner there. So those are the two best situations that I see for a young quarterback.
Yeah, and again, you got to have a coach that knows how to develop the young talent and then put them in a situation to grow and develop. So, I like the group. I definitely like the depth at quarterback in the draft this year. But you know that when we're doing this in the spring after the draft, you and I are both going to be scratching our heads saying, why did that team do this? It's going to happen. Yeah. And primarily it's going to happen, like I said, because they went to the combine and they showed this arm strength and they showed this or they showed that and they reached out and got him. And I'll admit, I thought when the Bills went on and got Manuel in the first round, I thought they reached for him, but he's turning out to be okay. Now, unfortunately, an injury this year has kind of delayed that progress. But,
yeah,
I mean, he went out and he actually proved to me a little bit more than I thought he had, which was good. And that's great for him. And maybe there's somebody in that group we just talked about where that will happen.